Hey everyone, Chad with Just Add Wood. Thanks for tuning into this multi-part patio build. Needed to build a covered patio we had a bunch of things I needed to do in order to turn that 2-car garage you see in the corner of the video there into a maker space or into a wood shop, which is what I really want to do. But in order to do so, I needed to build a covered patio by request and build a shed to house some of the things that are currently residing in that 2-car garage. What you're seeing here, which is probably a boring start to a video, kind of like watching paint dry, but this montage is to show off Armando and Juan's concrete work. They're available in North Georgia. If you need concrete work, I suggest give them a call. I shopped and shopped and shopped for concrete people and settled on them, and I couldn't be more happy with my choice. They did a fantastic job. And when you find a contractor that is really able to take what you want done and apply the best practices of their trade and get those things done, you really need to keep them. Father and son team brought a crew out and they knocked it out in just a few hours. They prepped the site, ordered the concrete arrived on time, they ordered the right amount of concrete, they room finished it, they troweled in relief joints rather than saw cutting relief joints in later, which I prefer the troweled in look. They picture framed it with a smooth frame and brushed in the middle. Forget the potato quality of this video, but they really did a good job. And so I just wanted to take a minute to thank them for the work. They poured several things for me that all at once. They poured the patio, they poured a shed, they poured a little extra driveway, and a parking pad for a utility trailer. And I'll show you those in just a minute as I walk up the driveway. And they did everything like they were supposed to do. The shed pad has a small footer around the perimeter. It has rebar in it. All of the concrete is fiber mesh reinforced. And it also has remesh or steel mesh in the concrete also. So it's very strong, very durable, and done right. But they just really did a good job, and I wanted to shout out to them and include them in the video just because of how much fun it was to work with them. I should probably also specify that I don't know them. I found them in an advertisement. They did a really good job for me. I'm not affiliated or sponsored or worked for them or paid from them in any way. Just like any tools or products you see in this video, I'm not affiliated or sponsored. There may be links in the description of the video, but I'm not affiliated in any way with these people, products, or parts or anything like that. Just things I've used and enjoyed or had good luck with. Okay, well that's enough of that. They're great to deal with and good people, but this isn't a concrete video, so moving right along. So what you're gonna see as this montage winds down is, so here's the house. They poured a little extra. We had a Coke bottle shaped driveway. You couldn't even park 2 cars side by side, so they poured extra width on the driveway there. Then what you're gonna see immediately in the camera next is a little extra parking space for a small utility trailer I have. Behind that is the 12 by 16 shed pad, and here's the 10 by 30 patio that we poured with a little extra side space there for the barbecue grills that won't be under the cover. And here I am to tell you a little bit more about today's project. Hey, good morning everyone. So it's about time we put a cover over this patio that we poured, a concrete patio that we poured quite some time ago, and it's time to put a cover on it. Now, I've never done anything like this, but I've seen it done on YouTube numerous times now, and I watched some framers build a house next door, so what could go wrong? What we're gonna do here is we poured this 10-foot by 30-foot extra patio on the back of my house, and so we're gonna add covered porch across the top here, and then we're gonna turn the corner and go towards the back door. Well, nothing quite as scary as cutting a hole in the side of your house, but let's see what happens. What could go wrong? So for this part of the project, I'm using Ryobi's battery-powered plunge saw. It's quite a bit smaller than a standard skill saw, and I put a diamond coated blade on it to cut this concrete siding. And it just so happened that the smaller footprint of this saw lined my cut up perfectly with the piece of siding above it so that I could use the piece of siding above it as a straight edge.
You'll be here a while.
And as I stated, it took a while. And of course, working solo, everything about a project takes longer. So while you're watching me remove this siding, everything I looked at on the Googles and the internets and the YouTubes tells me that there's two schools of thought on this. You can bolt the band directly to the siding, or you can remove the siding and bolt the band directly to the plywood. I chose to remove the siding because I felt like it'd be a better fit bolting the band to a bare piece of plywood that's flush, whereas the siding is slightly angled. And once all of the siding is removed, it was far easier to find the studs behind the plywood rather than to find the studs through the siding and the plywood. You know, for me though, when it comes to building projects like this was the point of no return. You can build a shelf and quit mid-project and no one cares. You know, you build something and it really doesn't matter where you start and stop. Once you cut a hole in your house, you're kind of committed at that point. So this to me was the scariest part of the whole thing. Wondering, can I complete this project now that I've put a hole in the side of my house?
Well, Helper Cat's taking a rest after making all the cuts in the siding. So there he is, just relaxing, trying to knock all of the concrete dust off of him. Well, I'm glad that chore is done. It's a very messy process. I didn't know what to expect going in, cutting cement siding. Now that all of the cuts are made, I don't know if you can see above me there, all of the cuts are made except in the corners. I've got to get in the corners where the saw wouldn't get up against the corner boards, so I have to finish up a few inches of cuts there. But it's a very dusty process. It's very hot out here. I'm very sweaty, so I'm covered in concrete siding dust. I was wearing my mask, and I would suggest you do the same if you're going to tackle a project like this. It's extremely dusty, and that dust can be harmful if breathed in. It's concrete, it's got silica and other products in it that you really don't want to breathe in. And the saw is extremely noisy, so you definitely want to wear ear protection and a mask. But now that that's done, we can pluck the siding off of the house to bolt the ledger boards directly to the house without the siding being in the way.
Okay, so the next step is to get a little flashing installed. This is sort of the flashing detail that I imagined. Is I've installed this piece of, it's supposed to be Z flashing, but I bought the wrong product. It's more like a step flashing or a drip edge. But I installed it first at the opening behind the siding, and then I'm going to install a piece of 14-inch flat roll flashing, tuck it up underneath the siding at the top, and then it will drip into this step flashing. So if any water gets behind the band, it'll drip onto that flashing. Okay, so the first part of the flashing detail is completed.
What I've got is the first piece of flashing, and then I've got a piece of 14-inch aluminum flashing that's tucked up behind the siding. Once my ledger board is bolted on, once the band is bolted on, if any water gets behind it, it's going to hit this metal, it's going to run to this piece of metal, and it's going to run out of my house and not in my walls. We've tucked it around this corner, and so it completely encapsulates the outside corner there. I just have to work on my inside corners. And then once the band is bolted on, and once the roof plywood, the sheathing is bolted on, then we'll have another, it should end about here. We'll have another piece of siding, another piece of flashing tucked in behind the siding, and it will come out onto the roof, and then that'll be covered with an extra layer shingle. So we've got lots of flashing details going on to make sure this stays dry. This is a good stopping point for today. After a good night's rest, it's time to get started again. If I can manage it by myself, I don't have any help this morning, I'm gonna get the 2x8 ledger board bolted to the house. So here's what I anticipate doing. I've already measured the first area where I'm gonna install the first ledger board. And I've already cut it to length, so it should be the correct length. And then I'm anticipate setting it on this little 1/4-inch spacer here when I set it up there. And I'm just going to drive a nail in the center of it for now. And that way, when I get it up there, it'll have a 1/4-inch gap at the bottom, and I'll have room to move it either way to make sure it's level before I fasten it securely to the house. So wish me luck.
So sometimes I think it's just easier to watch the video and sort of narrate what's happening rather than have little pauses in the video and try to explain what's about to happen and then make a video out of it. As Brad from Fix This Build That would say, mistakes were made. I was supposed to install the flashing above this ledger board before I installed this ledger board, so you'll notice right off the bat that I got a little excited and got ahead of myself and started installing this ledger board. In addition to trying to install this ledger board before the flashing goes in, which you'll see me struggling with installing the flashing in a minute, I got it up, I got it nailed in place, I set the torpedo level, you can hear it beeping in the background, and began to drive screws into the ledger board, not realizing that
son of a bitch,
the level was going to fall off and break my brand new digital level. Oh well, lesson learned. Mistakes were made. So from there, all I did was check for level. Once I secured it to the house, it was completely out of whack. So I took that screw out, reinstalled several other screws to get it leveled and secured to the house, and then struggled with installing the flashing above it. It did eventually wiggle into place. It was just a little difficult to get there. So with that lesson securely learned, I installed all of the roof flashing or wall flashing. I'm not sure what the technical term is for this. I installed it all before I installed the ledger boards. So after recording it from afar, I thought I better move the camera up closer to get a better view of how I'm tucking it behind the siding and how it will help waterproof this band. I don't know why I didn't cut my gutters off before now. They do seem like they're in the way. Oh well. Alright, so here I attached the camera to a flimsy piece of flashing and sternly told it,
don't push my camera.
famous last words. Unfortunately, the microphone was ruined. Fortunately, the camera was not. It continued to record throughout the fall and for the rest of this series. From there, it was just a matter of installing the rest of the flashing, which you can see has already been done, and install the remaining ledger boards. Same process as before. I would just haul a ledger board up with a nail already driven into the center of it. I would sort of haphazardly hold it in place, get it somewhat level, pound that nail in place, and then finalize level and drive the screws. Speaking of screws, I'm using the headlock, self-driving, self-tapping ledger screws. They're allegedly stronger than lag bolts, so I was using these because they drive in real easy and they seem to hold real firm. Now I am installing these into studs behind the plywood. Behind the siding, behind the flashing, behind the plywood is studs in the walls, and I made sure that each one of my ledger boards lines up with the stud. They start and stop on the studs, and they're completely bolted to every stud. And I think it's probably getting close to a good stopping point for the next part of this series, which will be standing up the posts and installing the ceiling joists and getting plywood and roof on it. Then we'll get into wiring and the rest of the series. So I appreciate you watching. I hope somebody learns a thing or two from this series. Even if you learn that you don't want to build your own patio, you've learned something. Hopefully you'll watch the rest of the series. There'll be future videos of the rest of this patio build and the rest of my journey completing these other chores so that I can build a workspace in my garage. Please like, subscribe, leave any comments below of anything you see lacking or any comments or questions or compliments. I would appreciate to hear from you. Thanks for watching and see you next one.